Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I am back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, how long should a typical weight training session last? Again, it's not about the duration of the workout. It's what you do in that workout that matters. Okay. And I've talked about in the past how I have people that work with me for 30, 45 minutes in the gym, but those people get more done as far as volume, sets, reps, intensity than most people get done spending 2 hours in the gym. Okay. And, there's a lot of people out there that say, yeah, I spend an hour and a half, 2 hours in the gym, but they're not training. They're on their phone, they're screwing around, they're talking to other gym members, they're cruising Instagram, TikTok, but they're not training. If you were training with the utmost amount of intensity, there's no way that you're going to be able to maintain that level of intensity for 2 hours. Never mind even an hour, because a lot of people they go in for the gym and they go about a 60-minute session with me, but even at that time, around 45, 50 minutes, they're done. We've really pushed it. So those last 10 minutes, it's more about cruise control, maybe even doing some light stretching at the end. Okay. But honestly, if you're pushing yourself beyond your limits and you're really focusing on every single set that you do, as in zoned in on your set, that mind to muscle connection, resting very little between sets, making sure that you're controlling every single rep on the eccentric contraction and concentric contraction, figuring out, should I be increasing my weight? Should I be decreasing my weight? Also keeping in mind what's going to be my next exercise. So you're making sure that you're practicing proper sequencing in the gym. All these things matter. And what matters the most is the amount of effort that you're putting into each and every workout you do. So it's not about the duration, it's about the intensity. Okay. So utilize your time in an efficient manner. Don't worry about how much time you're in the gym. Just utilize the time that you do have. Some of the best workouts that I do are 35, 40 minutes max. And I noticed that I get really good results when I do workouts like that because I'm pushing my muscles beyond their limitations. And then I rest them. I give them a good week off. As I said, I train every single muscle group once a week. Well, not right now. Right now, I'm recovering from the hernia surgery, so I'm not training at all. But when I do train, I train every single muscle group once a week. So if I do chest on Monday, I'm not going to do chest till the following Monday. So you better believe when I'm doing that chest workout, I'm going all out. Okay. And I do the exact same format with all clients, whether I'm working with them in-house or online. Okay. So don't worry about the duration. Okay. Just focus on the intensity and make sure that you're zoned in on every single set and you're focusing on that mind to muscle connection. Okay. Nick, what's the best rep range for building muscle? Uh, in my personal opinion, the best rep range when it comes to hypertrophy, as in building that solid, lean, dense muscle, sculpting those muscle bellies, 10 to 15. I'm a huge advocate of staying within double digits. Every once in a while, I'll bring a client down or even myself down to single digits, as in maybe 8 reps, but that will be on a final set of an exercise. And there's usually a drop set incorporated along with that. So if I'm doing, let's say, an incline barbell bench press with a client and that client is bench pressing 45 and a quarter aside, they knock out 8 reps. I'll strip off a quarter each side. So we're doing a 45 aside for maybe another 8 reps. So that's the only time that I do single digits, but more often than not, I'm out there doing double digit reps with every single person I work with. Because again, the people that hire me want to transform their physiques and improve overall health and well-being. So if you want to transform your physique and you want to build that solid, lean, dense muscle that I just spoke about, along with muscular endurance and also cardiovascular endurance, double reps work best. Okay. So double digit repetitions along with minimal rest periods. So high volume training, as in lots of sets, lots of reps, minimal rest period, that's going to help build muscle. If your goal is to be a power lifter, and I talked about this last week on the channel, if your goal is to be a power lifter and all you care about is building more strength, then keep your reps in single digits, that 1 to 6 rep range. Okay. And that's what powerlifters do. But if you're like most people and when you go to the gym, you want to see results. So you want to see changes in your physique, whether your goal is to lose fat, build muscle, or a combination of the two. My recommendation to you, keep your reps between 10 to 15. Okay. Problem is if you go too high in reps, you get a lot of people who go 20, 25 repetitions. The problem with that is that then you're not really going to build any muscle. I mean, you're going to build muscular endurance for sure, but you're not going to build and sculpt and define muscle bellies. I always like to do higher repetitions like 20, 25 when I do abdominal work, body weight exercises, if I do push-ups. But when it comes to actual weight training, where you can choose the amount of weight that you're pushing, my recommendation, keep the reps between 10 to 15. So double digit reps work best. If you can do more than 15 reps with the weight that you're doing, as long as it's on a warm-up set, but if you can do more, my recommendation is increase your weight. Okay. Because there's a lot of people that I work with online and I had them follow that 10 to 15 rep range, and then they'll send me videos of what they're doing in the gym so I can critique the exercises they're doing, critique their form, their technique. And I'm watching them do it. I'm like, that looks really easy for you. Why are you not pushing more weight? Like, well, I'm staying within my rep range. I'm like, right, but it looks like you could easily push out another 10, 15 reps. So increase your weight. Okay. The only time the weight should feel light is on the first set of a new exercise. And if it's a new exercise, as in like, okay, you just finished, let's say it's a chest day, you just finished those incline barbell bench presses, and now you're moving on to a flat barbell bench press. Even though you're warmed up from the incline barbell bench press, I would still strongly advise you to warm up on the flat barbell bench press. So pick a weight that you could easily knock out 30 reps if you had to, but keep it at 15 and then increase accordingly based on how you are feeling and how your energy levels are that day. Because remember, not every workout's going to be the same. Sometimes you're going to feel really good. Sometimes you're not going to feel really good. Okay. Sometimes you're going to have lots of energy. Sometimes you're going to be really tired. Okay. That's the great thing about being a human. Okay, so you never know how you're going to feel. And so you really have to pay attention to what's going on in the gym and what's going on with your body. And again, like I said in the first question, creating that mind to muscle connection. Okay, because then your body will tell you, yeah, I can increase the weight today, or no, let's back off a little bit because my joints are bothering me, my back is bothering me, maybe I'm feeling a little under the weather. Listen to your body. Okay, and then set the weights accordingly each set. All right. Okay. Nick, what are the best foods to eat for muscle gain? So it's not one specific food. Like, of course, I could say chicken breast, turkey breast, egg whites, right? I could tell you to eat brown rice, white rice, quinoa. I could tell you to have natural peanut butter, almond butter, cashew butter. But it's more important that you're looking at the macronutrients, okay? And the quality of the macronutrients being the micronutrients. So you want to make sure that you're having lean proteins. Okay, you want to make sure that you're having healthy fats, and you want to make sure that you're having complex carbohydrates. You want to keep your sugar intake low. And a rule of thumb that I use with all my clients, I always tell them, like, look, if you're an active female, I don't want you consuming more than 25 grams of sugar per day. And that's natural sugar. If you're an active male, no more than 30 grams of sugar per day. You don't need it. Your body doesn't need it. Okay. Now, a lot of people think, well, that's a lot of sugar. It's actually not that much. There's a lot of sugar in fruit. There's a lot of sugar in a lot of ingredients that we have. That good quality foods have a lot of condiments. Okay. But you have to be careful because if you start having the bad foods, that sugar starts to add up very quickly. I think like a can of Coke is like 30 grams of sugar. So there's your sugar for the day. And that's processed sugar. Okay, it's added sugar. So my recommendation is when you're trying to focus on building muscle, you want to fuel your body with the best foods possible. Okay, so like I said, it could be any of those foods that I just listed, but there's tons more. Because if you're a vegan, well, guess what? You're not having meats as your protein sources. But you can have lentils, you can have beans, right? So you have to be strategic with how you put in your certain meals. So I can't just give you an answer and say, okay, eat this, this, this. Of course, I can do that if you're working with me on a nutritional plan, because then I can customize the plan specifically for you. But I don't know if you're a vegan, vegetarian. Maybe you're practicing the carnivore diet right now. Maybe you're doing intermittent fasting. I don't know. Maybe you're doing carb cycling. So you have to make sure, though, that whatever foods you're having, they fit that criteria. That criteria being the lean protein sources, the healthy fats, and the complex carbs. You don't want to have simple carbs. You don't want to have trans fats, and you don't want to have fatty protein sources. And what I mean by fatty protein sources, because some fatty protein sources aren't bad. Like technically, salmon is considered a fatty protein source because that's omega-3 fats. But ribeye is also considered a fatty protein source, ribeye steak, which I would I wouldn't have a ribeye steak because, in my opinion, that's not a good fatty protein. Okay, so you have to look at the micronutrients, the quality of the food you're consuming. You have to think of your body like a luxury car. If you're driving around in a Ferrari, are you going to fill it with cheap gas? No. So treat your body like it's a Ferrari, fuel it properly, okay? Make sure you're getting all the right nutrients. And if you're not sure how to do that, work with a professional that can help you, whether it's a dietitian, nutritionist, or personal trainer, coach, someone that has a good grasp over dietary nutrition and can guide you along the way. Okay. Okay, another food question. Nick, do I need to count macros to see results? Okay, so here's the thing when it comes to macronutrients and calories. If you work with me online or you watch the Q&A on a weekly basis, you know that I don't count calories. I don't believe in counting calories. If your goal is to build muscle and lose fat, which for most people I would imagine is their goal, changing body composition, calorie counting has to go out the window. It does. If your goal is just to lose weight on the scale, go ahead, count calories. But if you want to ensure that the weight you're losing is not muscle, water, and fat, and you want to ensure that the weight that you're losing is just fat, my recommendation to you is to count your macronutrients. Now, you don't have to become obsessed with counting your macronutrients, but you should have a general idea of where your macros are. Okay. So even myself, all these years of doing my own diet, I have a general idea of how much carbs I'm consuming right now, my protein intake and my fat intake. Some days it's a little bit higher than others, but for the most part, it's pretty consistent. Okay. Bearing in mind that I'm not training right now, I don't need to eat as much food. So I've cut down my macronutrients quite a bit. But when I start lifting weights again, I'll increase them. Okay. So, do you need to count macronutrients? My recommendation is just to have a good idea. And the best way to have a good idea is, more importantly, practice portion control. In my experience, the people that struggle to lose weight or gain weight are the people that don't practice portion control. So, by measuring out your food, whether that's using a food scale, measuring cup, combination of the two, it's going to allow you to have a better understanding of what you're putting into your body. And so, for example, if you're trying to lose weight and you've hit a plateau, you're not going to be too sure what to do as far as dietary nutrition is concerned because you don't know how much carbs you're having. You don't know how much protein you're having. You don't know how much fat you're having. So, if you don't have that data, where are you going to make those revisions? So, this is why it's so important to have a general idea. And again, if your goal is to lose, say, 20 pounds, if you're taking that goal seriously, I imagine that you're going to do your homework, you're going to do your research, and you're going to have a good understanding of, okay, what do I need to do to lose this weight? Do I need to decrease my carbs, increase my fats, rotate my protein? Do I need to decrease my fats, rotate my carbs, decrease my protein? This is something that a lot of people don't understand. And it's so important because if you can get into rotating your macronutrients on a weekly basis, not a daily basis, just on a weekly basis, just keep things simple, it makes a huge difference in whether you're trying to lose body fat or build muscle or a combination of the two. Okay. So I would say yes, especially if you are someone who is trying to lose a certain amount of weight or gain a certain amount of weight. But once you've hit that, hey, I'm happy at this weight. I lost my 20 pounds. I'm happy at this weight. You should have a general idea of how many carbs you're consuming a day, how much fat you're consuming a day, how much protein. Give and take could be 20, 30 grams of each, whatever. But you should have a general idea. And if you have that general idea, you can kind of put your body on cruise control. And as long as you continue to consume 200 grams of protein, 150 grams of carbs, and 60 grams of fat, I'm just throwing out those numbers. As long as you stay within those numbers, give or take 20, 30 grams on each, you should be okay. Okay. But at the beginning, when you're trying to get that weight down or that weight up, yes, I would strongly advise you to count your macronutrients. It makes it a hell of a lot easier when you hit a plateau because I promise you, you will hit a plateau. You will. And once you hit that plateau, you'll know exactly where you need to make changes because you know how many carbs you're having, you know how much protein you're having, you know how much fats you're having. This is all I do when I work with people online with their weekly check-ins. I'm like, oh, you didn't lose weight this week, but you had lots of energy and your weights are strong in the gym, but we didn't lose any weight. So I increased your carbs last week. Why don't I decrease your carbs a little bit, but increase your fats? Try that 2 or 3 days later, they lose another pound. Great, perfect. That worked. Okay. If I don't have that information, no, I don't know where to make changes. So I would advise you to count your macros. Yes. Okay. Nick, how do I reduce body fat without losing muscle? So again, this goes back down into making sure that you don't go into too much of a severe caloric deficit. Now, as I said, I don't count calories, but I do count macronutrients. So if you're getting in enough protein, you're getting in enough carbohydrates, you're getting in enough healthy fats, you shouldn't lose any body fat, or sure, you shouldn't lose any muscle when you're on a nutritional plan. Okay. You should only lose body fat, of course. You don't need to lose muscle when you're trying to cut, right? Or you're trying to lose weight. That's a misconception. As long, again, as you're fueling your body properly, so you're putting in the right nutrients. So if you're having, for example, if you're starving your body and you're not eating enough food, your body will go into what we call a catabolic state. So it will start to burn muscle, start to eat muscle. Remember, your body will always burn muscle before it burns fat. Always. Our bodies are very resilient. Our bodies are very smart. Our bodies say, hey, we don't need muscle, but we need fat for survival. So we're going to burn this muscle that looks pretty, but you don't need it, and we're going to keep the fat. And this is why when people start dropping their carbs too low or dropping their fats too low, they hit a plateau, they stall, and their metabolism slows down. Okay. So going into a severe caloric deficit is not a good idea long term. Short term, it works great. Yeah, you'll lose 4 or 5 pounds a week. But once you hit that plateau, where do you go from there? Right. Not to mention that when you're starving your body for prolonged periods of time, you risk screwing up your thyroid. Okay. So you don't want to do that. If you risk screwing up your thyroid, now all of a sudden you're putting all the weight back on when you start eating normally again. Okay. So you have to be careful with how you drop the body fat, but you have to make sure that you're getting in all those nutrients. So slow and steady works best. So to answer that question, my recommendation is when you're starting off on a weight loss plan, for example, okay, it could be a weight gaining plan, weight loss plan, whatever, but let's say you're starting off on a weight loss plan. You want to take your body weight, which is, let's say you're 200 pounds, okay, times that body weight for each macronutrient. So what I like to do usually with clients is I'll take their body weight, that 200-pound individual, and I'll go, okay, for protein, I'm going to give them 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. So I'll take that 200 and I'll times it by 1.5. For fats, I'll usually go zero point 0.5 times 200 grams per 200 pounds. Okay. And then for carbs, I'll usually match it. So I'll go carbs, again, person's 200 pounds, I'm going to give them 200 grams of carbs. That's where I start people, okay, based on their body weight. Not just their lean body weight, just body weight overall. And then I watch how their body changes or doesn't change on a weekly basis. If it's changing, I keep going with that format. If it's not, that's where I make the tweaks and revisions. Okay. There is a science behind it, but it's not overly complicated. And unfortunately, there's so many people out there that try to overly complicate it and sell their programs, their weight loss programs, their muscle building programs, and all this nonsense. And I always tell people, look, it's not that complicated. I'm happy to teach you how to do it. But if you'd rather me just make the revisions for you so you don't have to second guess yourself, that's what I'm here for. Okay. So to answer that question, you just want to make sure that you're putting the right nutrients in your body and not just looking at calories. And hell, not even just looking at macros, looking at the micros, the quality of the food that you're consuming. Okay. Because there really is a big difference when you're having a complex carbohydrate source like brown rice versus a simple carbohydrate source like white bread. Okay. Big difference. So you want to make sure you're eating smart and you want to make sure that the food that you are consuming is going to help you preserve and build muscle while at the same time allow you to lose that stubborn, unwanted body fat. All right. Okay. Nick, are cheat meals okay or do they slow down progress? I had a similar question to this, I believe, a few weeks ago. And so, my philosophy on cheat meals is this, is that every single person I work with, I give them at least one cheat meal a week. Okay. And the reason I do that is because I want people to have a sense of normalcy in their lives. I know not everyone eats like a robot. I get it. I know a lot of people have cravings. And I know a lot of people like variety in their diet. I know a lot of people like to use food as a way to socialize with other people or going out to restaurants with family members or friends, coworkers, whatever. So I get it. At the same time, though, there are some people I work with who have severe eating disorders. And for those people, a cheat meal can throw them off big time. It can turn them into a full-on binge. Okay. Or turn that one meal into a full-on binge. I've seen it. So it really it depends on the individual. But as I said, every single person I work with, I give a cheat meal. But my definition of a cheat meal is not necessarily burgers and fries, pizza, spaghetti, candy bars, chocolate bars, like muffins, pastries, all this stuff. No. Okay. My definition of a cheat meal is have something that you're craving. So for a lot of people who follow a fairly clean diet, they might just be craving more peanut butter. They might be craving more oatmeal. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. I have a lot of people I work with, especially competitors, who they don't want that burger and fries. Not only because they feel it will throw them off their diet, it also makes them feel very lethargic. They almost feel like they're going to go into a food coma, and the next day they're feeling like a food hangover. So they'd rather not have it. I'm like that. I stopped having cheat meals back in 2020. I don't do them anymore. But every once in a while, if I'm craving additional foods on my own diet, I'll have it. I don't really consider it a cheat meal, but I'll have it. Okay. So it's making sure that you understand your relationship with food. Do you have a healthy relationship with food, or do you have an unhealthy relationship with food? So I learned that a long time ago, is that not everyone needs to have a so-called cheat meal, which is like a junk food, but they can have a cheat meal, which is also known as a refeed meal. So a refeed meal could be like, okay, you're having 200 grams of carbs a day. Today, I want you to have 300 grams of carbs a day, and I want you to have that 100 grams in one additional meal. Okay. It's not that hard to get that in if you do go out and you have, something like, even if you have something on like a healthy choice, like maybe a tuna poke bowl or something like that, it's pretty easy to get those carbohydrates in pretty quickly. And that would be a great way to get some healthy nutrients in as well. Okay. So again, it doesn't have to be junk food. It could be good food, but I do recommend that at least once a week, break from the diet for one meal. Okay. Because it will give you a sense of normalcy, and you won't start to feel like, oh, I have no life and this sucks. I don't want to follow this diet anymore, because, you're depriving yourself of so much. And I don't mean depriving yourself just of food, but depriving yourself maybe of social obligations, because, oh, I can't go out to eat because I'm going to, eat something that's not on my diet. It's going to throw me off. Allow yourself a little bit of leniency. Okay. That's important. And it's not, honestly, as far as you're, losing weight or gaining weight, it's not going to throw you off. One meal won't do anything. Okay. Now, if that one meal turns into a full-on binge, absolutely, you can erase 1 week of hard work from one binge day. This is why I advise people to have cheat meals or refeed meals and not cheat days. Okay. So remember that meal, not day. Okay. Nick, how can I curb cravings while on a cut? If you're having severe cravings when you're on a cut, when you're trying to lose body fat, that's usually an indicator that you're lacking some essential nutrient, some type of essential nutrient. Okay. So a lot of times when people go on these cutting diets, they deprive themselves of certain macronutrients. I've seen people do this. If they're doing keto, they cut out carbs. I've seen some people go on the low carb, no fat diets, which is not a good idea, because now you're depriving yourself of healthy fats. Okay. Your body does need some carbohydrates, in my opinion. No, the body won't. You are not going to die without carbohydrates. We don't need carbs to survive, unlike fats, which we need for our brain, and protein that we do need for our muscle. We don't need carbs to survive. But I feel for overall performance in the gym and just outside the gym, even for just for energy, just for glycogen storages, I think it's important to have complex carbohydrates in the diet. And very rarely do I take them out. I've talked about in the past, if I'm working with someone for a bodybuilding show, I might take the carbs down to, maybe 20, 15 grams per day, but I'll increase their fats. And I only do that for a short period of time. I don't do that for a long period of time at all. And that's only in extreme cases. Okay. So again, you want to make sure that when you're doing something, sorry, my alarm is going off right now. You want to make sure that when you are on any diet, that you listen to your body. Just like in the gym, you listen to your body. So if your body is telling you, oh, I'm really craving sugar right now, is there a possibility that maybe you're not consuming enough natural sugar? Okay. And there could be, because if your diet is too clean and you're not getting enough sugar in your body, your blood sugar levels are going to start to drop. So you want to make sure that you are consuming some sugar. And as I said, for men, I recommend active males 30 grams of sugar per day, and for women, 25 grams of sugar per day. Okay. Your body does need sugar, so don't take it out completely. Okay. Just like sodium. The amount of people I've worked with in the past who take sodium out of their diet, I'm like, what are you doing? It's like you could die. You need sodium. So make sure that you have sodium in your diet. Make sure that you have sugar in your diet. Okay. But if you're having cravings like that, that's usually an indicator that you're lacking something, some essential nutrient. Now, if you're someone who was having, 100 grams of sugar per day, and now you've started to clean up your diet and you've gone down to 30, well, yeah, you're going to have a lot of cravings. Okay. And it's not necessarily because you're lacking nutrients. It's because now you're someone who I would consider to be a sugar addict and you're taking all that sugar out of your body. So you're going to go through withdrawal. That's very common. And for people like that, I work with quite a few people like that, people who come to work with me online. With people who are sugar addicts, what I typically do is I start to slowly decrease their sugar intake. I don't take them from 100 grams down to 30 grams overnight, ever. Okay. Because they're going to get headaches, they're going to feel lethargic, they're going to be moody, they're going to have no energy, and they're most likely going to relapse and give up on the diet. Okay. So you have to make sure that you do things properly and you have to make sure that you put together a structured nutritional plan that makes sense. But if you are someone that's noticing you're having a lot of cravings, like I said, it's an indicator that you're lacking a certain nutrient. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, have a packet of Splenda, drink more coffee because coffee will suppress your appetite. No, because in my opinion, you're just covering a problem. You're just putting like a blanket over it. You're not fixing the problem. So you need to address the problem long term. You can't just keep chugging coffee because coffee is full of stimulants. So now you're going to be wrong. You're going to become a caffeine addict, right? So, and you don't want to be just throwing Splenda down on every little thing that you have because Splenda is an artificial sweetener. So you have to be careful. I'm okay with people having a little bit of Splenda and I'm okay with people having a little bit of coffee. But if you're using it on a regular basis, as in, day out, and you're having it multiple times a day because you're having cravings, you're just covering the problem and you're not addressing it. So, in order to address it, you have to have a hard look at your diet and say, what am I lacking right now? Am I lacking essential fats? Okay. For a lot of people who take out fats, for example, their diet, they notice they're always hungry. And I'll look at someone's diet, I'm like, well, no wonder you're always hungry. You don't have enough fats. Fats allow you to feel fuller for a longer period of time. They help regulate your blood sugar levels. So you want to make sure that you're consuming enough healthy fats so that you're not ravenous, right? So that's very important. And then a lot of times I'll notice some people in the gym, their strength starts to go down when they start going on a so-called cut diet. And it's because they're not getting enough carbs. So now they're losing glycogen in their muscle bellies, and now they're going to start losing muscle. So yeah, the weight's going to go down on the scale, but they're losing muscle, not fat. So you have to find that balance. And you have to make sure that you're putting in the proper micronutrients into your diet. Okay. And again, if you're doing this, you shouldn't have any cravings. So my recommendation to you is to take a hard look at your diet, figure out what you're lacking. Is it fats? Is it carbs? Could even be protein. Okay. And once you figure that out, you can make those adjustments and that should take care of the cravings. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you to have multiple cups of coffee a day to help suppress your appetite. I'm not going to tell you have a bunch of artificial sweeteners because again, that's not solving the problem. You need to solve the problem. You need to address the issue, fix it for good, and not just put a bandage over it. All right. Okay. Oh, one more question. Nick, what are your thoughts on altering macros or calories on non-workout days or days where more calories are burned? Does this support overall health and well-being? I've always been under the philosophy of keep things as simple as possible. Why overcomplicate things? So, as far as carb rotating, as I mentioned earlier, I do that on a weekly basis, but I don't do it on a daily basis. Okay. And the whole thing with carb rotating or carb cycling, whatever you want to call it, is that if you're doing something consistently, day in, day out, you should start to see results. Bearing in mind whatever you're doing is good for you. Okay. So if you're going to the gym consistently, 5, 6 days a week, if you're eating clean consistently, 7 days a week, if you're doing all this, if you're eating properly, if you're resting properly, if you're training properly, you're going to see results. The whole idea of, oh, because I worked out today, I'm going to consume, 100 more carbs, and tomorrow I'm not working out, so I'm going to consume, 500 fewer calories. That to me is overcomplicating things and not necessary. Okay. So the more that someone complicates the process, the more likely they are to fall off the wagon. Okay. So I always like to keep things simple. And that's why I recommend carb cycling or carb rotating or whatever you want to call it. I call it macronutrient rotations on a weekly basis. So what I do with my clients is they send me biweekly check-ins and I'll look at their photos, I'll look at their results as in how much weight they've lost or gained, how they're feeling, how they're sleeping, is their strength going up in the gym. There's tons of other stuff I ask for. But once I have all that information, that's where I'll make the changes. And every single person that works with me will tell you that I always make revisions to the macronutrients on a weekly basis. Even if they're getting great results, I still make changes, but small changes. If they're not getting good results, I'll make big changes. But it's important because if you're constantly rotating your macros on a weekly basis, this is going to allow the body to utilize different nutrients. Okay, which works really well when it comes to building muscle and burning fat. As I said, there's a science behind this. But as far as doing it on a daily basis, I mean, you could, and I mean, I know there's a lot of people that do that. I know there's a lot of coaches that recommend doing that. But to me, it's just overcomplicating stuff that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. It doesn't. Okay. So I think at the end of the day, if you look at the body as a whole and you look at it as 1 week of following a certain plan, and then the following week, I'm going to switch up that plan, stick with the same food, stick with the same workouts, but maybe this week I'm going to go higher on my carbs, lower on my fats, and I'll keep the protein the same. Okay. But if you're doing that daily, I just think it's overkill. And it's just something that I don't recommend. It's something that I don't do because that would drive me crazy having to, look at every single meal I do because, oh, today I'm training, today I'm not training. And also for someone like myself or a lot of people I work with, they don't know when they're going to train. There are some days like when I was training that I'm like, I don't think I'm going to train today. And then halfway through the day, I'm like, you know what? I feel really good. So I'm going to train. But if I was on a schedule where I'm like, well, I'm not going to train today, so I'm going to have this much carbs, this much protein, this much fat, it would just be just again overcomplicated. So I like to keep everything like this. I don't like to see spikes. I don't like that. Okay. I don't want to go through peaks and valleys with my macros. I don't want to go through peaks and valleys with energy levels. I don't want to go through peaks and valleys with the weight on the scale if I'm trying to lose weight or gain weight. I like consistent results. So my recommendation, I would not recommend cycling your macronutrients on a daily basis based on the amount of exercise you're doing or how much energy you are exerting. I would just keep things consistent for a 7 day span and then make changes as necessary. If you are trying to, let's say, lose weight, my recommendation to you would be to do weekly weigh-ins just to see what's going on the scale. Make sure that you are taking that weight at the same time, same day, every week. So if it's Friday morning in a fasted state, that's when you want to take that weight. Okay. That's when you want to do your photos because again, it's consistency. Okay. So that's my recommendation. Keep things simple, keep things consistent, and you should start to notice results. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, June the 30th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and feedback that I receive from each and every one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.